Hello, my miraculous friend, and welcome to another episode of the Magnify Your Miracles podcast. This is Reverend Frances Faden, and I'm so grateful that we get to spend this time together today. We're going to be talking about something that I think is really important, especially for highly sensitive people and for light workers who tend to be givers. So we're going to be talking a little bit about the shadow side of giving and how to get out of that energy. But before we do that, let's take a few deep breaths together, just to get ourselves grounded and centered. Breathing in the energy of expansion, breathing out anything you no longer need. And if you are driving, I'm going to ask you to please keep your eyes open, but you can still bring your awareness to your breath. And as your awareness begins to get settled into this present moment a little bit more, we're creating a space within you to receive this inspiration. And knowing that whatever it is that you need to hear today is going to be exactly what happens. Let's take one more deep breath together in gratitude, and we can begin. All right, my friend. Well, welcome once again. I can't say I'm excited to talk about this, but I definitely have a lot of thoughts and things I want to share with you about this, because it seems like almost every client I've been talking to this week, people in my membership, have been talking about this energy of giving and receiving, and also giving and what I call giving and resentment. And so we have heard over and over and over again, oh, it's better to give than to receive. And I think as highly sensitive people and as light workers, that hasn't always worked in our advantage. We want to think about giving and receiving as an infinity symbol, going round like this. It's one continuous energy. It manifests differently, but in fact, giving and receiving are the same frequency. They're the same energy, just they look a little bit different when they're happening, but they're the same. And to just put the emphasis on one side of the equation, giving, 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 will throw you out of balance. And here's what happens. You end up, if you're somebody like me, where you tend to be a giving person, you care about people, your heart is very open, you want to help out when you can. But if you don't have discernment to know, when do I need to kind of balance out my giving and being on the receiving end, you will attract to you takers, people who take. So instead of having a beautiful relationship of giving and receiving and the energy being really, wonderful and kind of balanced, we have giving and taking. And I've been talking to so many of my clients about this week, that they have discovered that it could be with their clients, it could be with the person that they're married to, it could be with family members, it could be with their boss, it could be anybody. If you have this pattern of, oh, I'm the giver, I give and I give and I give, you will draw to you somebody who's like, okay, and I'll take and I'll take and I'll take. And the most important thing you need to know about this is that takers will never set the boundaries. They will never say, you've given enough. That's okay. I'm good for now, because they're not wired to do that. And if you're like me and you are going to assume that people are going to do that, you're going to get burned out really, really fast, because you're going to continue to give and they are going to continue to take, and you are not taking care of yourself, and your tank is getting lower and lower and lower. I've seen this happen with people in really demanding jobs. I've seen this happen with people who are in relationships that are not healthy, or they're going through a cycle. It might not be the whole relationship, but they're going through a cycle where maybe the other person isn't aware that this is going on. And we are giving, and waiting for the other person to see that we're drained. We're waiting for the other person to say, oh, perhaps you've been giving too much. And I got news for you, my friends. It doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. Not when you're with somebody who is in taking mode and they're like, bring it on. So I want to talk about some of the shadow elements here, and then what you can do to reverse this. Because when you're a giver and you're a healer and you're a light worker, if you get depleted, it's really important for you to know that it doesn't have to be that way. I see a lot of people who end up being depleted, financially depleted, energetically depleted, which is really the same thing, emotionally, mentally, and you can even get to the point of feeling spiritually depleted because the hose is just going one way and you're not allowing yourself to be on the receiving end. Now, let me just be clear. There are some situations where a person is in that position of being a giver and the other person is on the receiving end because that's how they are. Maybe it's a special needs person. Maybe it's a child that they're not supposed to be giving back to you at that point. I'm not talking about those kinds of situations. And if you do find you're in a situation where you're a caregiver, maybe you're taking care of an elderly parent or you're taking care of somebody with special needs, that's not quite the same as, the taking energy, but it may still have the same effect on you. And you need to be filling up your bucket every day. If you're in a situation where maybe it's your job to be a caregiver, you need to fill it up every day. But the part that I wanted to talk to you about is a little bit of that shadow energy that I've noticed. And often when our identity is, I'm a giver, it could be a couple of things going on. One, we're not comfortable with receiving. That could be a vulnerability issue. Like we don't want to appear vulnerable, like I'm okay, I don't need anything. And sometimes that has to do with if you grew up in a situation where your needs weren't met, you're afraid that your needs aren't going to get met. So you just push them away and just pretend like you have no needs. And that way, I'm just going to give. The other thing is if you got a lot of rewards for giving and you've heard over and over again, it's better to give, then you might have this as part of your identity and how you win approval from people, how you are feeling good about yourself as a good person. I'm a good person if I'm giving. These are tricky things. And so it's more than we can go into today, but I'm just going to ask you to meditate on that. I had to look at this myself, and this was uncomfortable. It's really uncomfortable to see that. I mean, it's tricky because one of my love languages is gifts. I love to give people gifts. But I had to recognize that there were times when I was giving because it was my pure joy to do it. And there were times where I was giving because that's how I was getting my needs met. I wanted that person to like me, or I wanted to feel accepted, or even in my own self, like I wanted to feel like a good person. So I did something so I could feel like a good person, which is very different than just giving. And the Bhagavad Gita talks a little bit about this, of like letting go of being attached to the outcome. It talks about we're meant to be doing what we're here to do. It's our dharma, without being attached to, did they like it? Did it work? Am I going to get paid? How's it going to be? All of that. And I think it's really speaking to this idea of giving without attachment. So how do you know whether you're giving in a good place or not? How can we help you navigate this? You want to ask yourself, when I'm doing this, am I joyful or am I resentful? Because giving and receiving very quickly turns into giving and resentment. And if you find yourself resenting whatever you're doing, I want you to stop and do something else. Go for a walk, get outside, and ask yourself, why am I doing this? Am I doing it because I think that I should do this? Am I doing it because I'm afraid my husband's going to get mad or my wife is going to get mad at me and I don't want them to get mad, so I'm going to do it, but I don't really want to do it? This is the kind of pickle that really messes up your energy field. And I've seen it because I've worked with so many people. Your third chakra starts looking a little bit distorted. Your heart chakra starts to shut down. You start getting a little bit of inflammation on the inside because you're actually angry. And you're angry because you're crossing your own boundary. So you're no longer giving. And I just saw a quote this week, and I don't know who it was, but somebody, I think I saw it on Facebook, where it said, if you're giving without joy, it's not going to benefit you and it's not going to benefit them. How about that as a standard? Am I doing this from a place of joy, or am I doing it from a place of obligation? How do you know? How do I feel? When we worked, we lived in the spiritual community for about 6 years, And they would often put a call out for volunteers for all kinds of things every week. And one time, this message really struck both me and my wife Deepa. They left a message and say, "We're looking for volunteers to, do whatever it was that they were doing. And if it would bring you joy to serve in this way, please let me know." And we both looked at each other and we shook our heads. We were like, it will not bring us joy to be doing whatever the thing was. There were other things that we could do. And that's where we had to say, okay, let's volunteer for these other things. But the thing that they were asking, we were like, this is not going to put me in a joyful place. Let somebody else for whom this is joyful, let them do that position. I'm going to do the thing that feels joyful to me. Now, when I say joyful, I'm not talking about your likes and dislikes, happiness and sadness. There's a joy. I remember and I wrote about this in my book, Meditation is Friendship with God. I wrote it in the last chapter, this concept about sacrifice and what is it. I write about how when I used to be part of this singing group called the Victorian Singers, which was one of my favorite things I ever did. We lived in the spiritual community. We would go out in the wintertime. This was in Nevada City, California. And we would sing on Sundays and on Wednesdays. And they had this thing called Victorian Christmas. And it was usually freezing cold and or raining, one of the two. Very rarely was it sunny outside and fine. And we were all bundled up. We had our Victorian costumes on and everything. And I was uncomfortable. A lot of times, cold rain, we're standing there with our umbrellas, holding our little books and singing, Christmas songs. But you know what? I was in my joy. These little kids would come up to us and they'd have these big eyes, like they'd never seen music coming out of a person before. And you could feel the joy that they were having. And it was so joyful. Was I happy singing in the rain? No. Was I happy when it was freezing outside and between songs we had to run in to warm ourselves up so that, we weren't freezing? No, I wasn't happy. But was I joyful? Absolutely. So that's what I'm talking about is like, can you do it from a place of joy? Does it speak to your heart? If not, and you're having resentments, I'm going to ask you, my friend, address your resentments ASAP. Resentments actually have such an acidic vibration to them. People that have long held resentments, very often that's a contributing factor to different kinds of diseases, a lot of times to inflammatory situations, but not even just physical, on an emotional level. It's going to keep you from being able to magnify your miracles because that space that could be filled with joy and light is filled with resentment. So, I think Jesus says in the New Testament, he says, if you're going to go to the temple, but you still have somebody to forgive, go forgive that person. It's the same idea of before you're going to be able to magnify your miracles, you need to let go of some of these resentments. And as you do let them go, you're going to see miracles happening for you in your life. I promise you. So that's what I wanted to share with you about this idea of giving and receiving versus giving and resentment. If you're falling into resentment, stop and assess. What can I do? Can I ask for help? Can I do something different? And even if it's something that you need to do, like I've heard this a lot of times with moms when kids are younger, they want to have the kids, but oh my God, it's like it's all consuming for them and they don't necessarily get a break. One of the things I recommend that they do is they practice their power of choice and saying, today I'm choosing to take care of this person. And by consciously choosing, you're now giving something on a conscious level. You're not falling into a pattern of mindless giving, obligatory giving that's going to lead to resentment, waiting for the other person to get it, waiting for the other person to put a limit on it. The other person is never going to put a limit on it. Just accept that. This is part of you strengthening your solar plexus and really owning your energy, that you are here on the planet, you are a divine being, and it is your responsibility to set those limits. And the way that you know when do I need to set them is if you feel resentful. You've gone over the edge if you're feeling resentment. So I would love to hear about your experience with setting some boundaries. Have you been in situations where you've been with a taker? Have you been in a job like that, or been in a relationship like that, or been in a situation like that? Maybe it's a family dynamic that happens where you're expected to just give and give and give, and other people are just taking and taking. And how did you handle that? I'd love to hear about that. If you enjoyed this podcast, which I so hope that you did, I would love it if you could leave me a review. That would help me out so much. Even more than that, if you could tell your friends about it, if you shared it on social media, that would help me out as well. I really appreciate that. And remember, my friend, that the key to magnifying your miracles, once you've let go of your resentment, is to remember that your miracle is already here. God bless you, my friend. Thank you. Bye-bye.